most beekeepers in the United States keep either German or Italian bees because they are generally very docile, and they also have a high honey yield, and they're resistant to variances in temperature that most other European bees can't handle as well. This box contains about 1,500 bees. Typically, I would have 2 of the white brood supers, and they would have about 4,000 bees each. So a typical hive is about 8,000 bees. Now, as beekeepers, we usually don't harvest honey out of those brood supers. Those boxes are just for the bees. They're honey storage for them to raise their babies. We also put another set of boxes on top of the hive, and those are called honey supers. They're a little bit shallower, and we put a grate in between them and the brood supers that the queen cannot fit through. The queen is about twice the size of the regular worker bees. So she can't fit through, but the worker bees can. And bees are little overachievers. As long as you give them the resources and the space to do so, they will just keep making honey and keep making honey. So that's what we as beekeepers harvest from them. We make sure that they have what they need, and then we take the extra off the top. So fun facts about bees: there's only one time during a colony's life cycle that there are male bees. This is a girls only club. The way bees split and swarm, that's when a group of bees leaves, is when a colony reaches a certain amount of bees that are too many for one queen to manage by herself. She will use pheromones to communicate with the other bees, the worker bees, and tell them, hey, it's time to split the colony. We need to make some more queens. So they will pick 3 or 4 larva cells that have babies brood in them, and they will feed them a special substance called royal jelly. That will convert those regular larvae into queen larvae. At the same time, the queen also puts out a different set of pheromones that instructs another group of worker bees that they're about to get a new queen, so they need to make some males, some drones. So they feed them yet another substance, another set of enzymes. When those new queens and those new drones are about to hatch, the older queen swarms. She takes a portion of the colony with her and goes off to start a new life. The queens hatch. Usually there's anywhere from 2 to 5. They will use pheromones and a very specific little squeaking sound called keening to call to each other. And it's basically a challenge to duel. They'll make those sounds and find each other inside the hive, and then they will fight to the death. And whichever queen wins gets to rule the castle. Immediately after that happens, those drones are then caused to hatch out. And science is not really sure why. Probably pheromone communication, again, because that seems to be the language of bees. Once the drones hatch, the workers do just like with any other bees and clean them up and make sure they're healthy. But then they kick them out the front door because that queen is going to go out of her hive and fly around in what is called a queen's virgin flight. And those drones are all going to fly around her in a ball, fighting to fertilize her eggs. They also fight to the death. Only 1 or 2 drones get to fertilize the queen, and they die immediately following that act. So they fertilize the queen, they kick the bucket, she comes back. Any drones that somehow manage to survive the fray that come back to the hive are then ignored, and they might stick around for a couple of days, but the worker bees, just by instinct, stop feeding them, stop grooming them, completely ignore them, and just let them die. So honeybees are very much a girls-only club. So one of the biggest myths is that honey is bee barf, which it does come out of their mouths, but bees actually have a separate compartment inside of their body, aside from their stomach where they digest their foodstuffs for them. It's a compartment that combines nectar and pollen with enzymes so that they can make honey and wax. So it goes in there, they mix it all up, and then they do kind of spit it back into their mandibles and pack it into their cells. We've been tending bees for about 5 years, and in all that time, I've never once been stung. Really. You hear from people bees aren't aggressive on a regular basis. I'm sure everybody hears that, but they really, truly aren't. When a bee stings you, she puts her stinger into your skin, and then she falls off or she flies off. Her stinger rips out of her body and doesn't just rip out the stinger, it eviscerates her to pull some of her internal organs out also. So it's a kamikaze attack for a honeybee to sting you. Normally, as you approach a hive, they'll start buzzing you, they'll start bouncing off of you because they'd much rather you just go away and leave them about their business. Now, If I'm going to go deep into the hive to do an inspection down into where the queen and the brood are at, which you have to do on a fairly regular basis, hives can get infested by predatory instincts or funguses or molds. During a certain time of the year, they might need to be fed to help them keep up with their honey production. When I go that deep down in, because I'm getting close to the queen, the bees get really riled up. So then I wear a full head to toe goofy looking suit that makes me look like a space alien. But most of the time, even just to crack open the top and just look, just gloves and a veil to cover your head. The main place that bees are going to go for is your face. In nature, the #1 predatory animals that are going to mess with bees are things like bears and raccoons. And both have really thick, dense fur that honeybee stings can't get through. Just my 2-layer of skirts, a honeybee can't sting through. Their stingers are really, really short. So they've evolved to go after the face and the nose, the mouth, the eyes, because they can sting a bear on the nose. So even if I'm just looking, I wear the veil at least. But yeah, even out here today, bees are robbers. They'll rob each other's hives, steal each other's honey. And just being out here opening this every now and then, the local bees in the area can smell it. So all day long I've had little bees kind of hanging around, and I've just been shooing them away so they don't freak the kids out. But as long as you're not being a direct threat to them and their hive, and specifically their queen, they're really not likely to sting you. In some ways, yes, there are differences. I mean, the technology is better. I actually, over this last week, have done some research into early and mid-19th century beekeeping. They used a certain style of hive called a skep, which is a weird, almost conical shaped hive that they made out of paper. So the only way to harvest it was to completely destroy the hive. Well, we've learned that that destroys the colony and lessens your honey production. So we've got hive boxes now, where we've got the frames that are in it that we can lift up. So we've got the equipment is easier. But as far as just the day-to-day work that you actually have to do, 100, 200 years ago, to soothe my bees so that I could check them, I would use the same style of smoker that I use today. It's just this little billows with a spot where I can put wood shavings and gently puff smoke into them. As far as moving the bees out of my way, it's the same kind of very soft, very gentle brush. As far as like the cycle of when to harvest and all that, it stayed very, very much the same. And that's actually one of the things that I enjoy about beekeeping. It's very much part of a time when society was a little bit simpler, when life was a little bit slower. And it's very calming to know that. It's a centering activity.